When Rod Serling wrote The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street, he wasn't writing about aliens. He was writing about pattern recognition. He was documenting exactly what happens to the human brain when what we believe is normal breaks down. In this famous episode, the weapons were stones and hammers. Today, on the digital Maple Street, the weapons are false information, swatting, and cancellation. The result is the same: a community that destroys itself because it is terrified of the invisible enemy. Today we are going to examine The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street through the lens of 2026. We are going to look at the censorship that forced Serling to hide the truth and the algorithms that force us to hide ours. Rod Serling lied to network executives to save us, and we're about to find out why. To understand Maple Street, you have to go back to 5 years earlier to 1955. Rod Serling didn't want to write about aliens. He wanted to write about Emmett Till, a 14-year-old kid whose brutal murder exposed the reality of racism in America. He wrote a script called Noon on Doomsday. It was a brutal, realistic depiction of a lynch mob in the American South.
There was certainly a race problem in those days. It wasn't out in the street. It wasn't loud in our ears. It wasn't infesting our gut, our conscious gut, as it is today. But by God, there was anguish amongst minorities then as there is now.
He wanted to hold up a mirror to the country. But the sponsors, the companies that were selling cigarettes and vacuum cleaners, they panicked. They said, "You can't show racism. It's bad for business." They took Serling's script and they butchered it. They forced him to change the victim from black to white. They moved the location to New England. They removed all of the meaningful detail until it meant nothing. So fast forward to 2026, we have brand safety bots. Creators today, they have to speak in code. We say unalive because dead gets you demonetized. We say cupcake because predator gets you shadow banned. So just like Serling, we are forced to distort our language to get past the gatekeepers. The Serling solution was genius. He invented the sci-fi Trojan horse. He wrapped the uncomfortable truth about our culture inside the candy coating of science fiction. Maple Street isn't a sci-fi story. It's the Emmett Till story wearing an alien mask. The aliens start by breaking the pattern of convenience. The electricity dies, the radio goes silent. The darkness is terrifying, but at least it's shared. In 2026, the aliens break the pattern of consensus. It isn't about blackout. It's a fracture. It's the death of monoculture. The terror arrives when you realize the algorithm hasn't just curated your taste, it has curated your facts. The news on your screen describes a completely different physical reality than the one on your neighbor's screen. It feeds you a custom-built nightmare designed to validate your specific fears while feeding your neighbor a contradictory nightmare designed to enrage his specific prejudices. You're standing on the same lawn, watching the same sky, but inhabiting two completely different mathematical universes. You can't band together to fight the monster because you can no longer agree on what the monster is. In this episode, Les Goodman becomes the enemy because his car starts when everyone else's dies. He is the anomaly. In 2026, we hunt for anomalies too, not to find the truth, but to disqualify it. Real footage gets called artificial. Artificial footage gets believed. This channel is only a few months old and I've already been accused of being an AI myself more than once. In Serling's story, the neighbors were terrified that Les was an alien. We are terrified that the person that we're arguing with isn't even human. This is the paranoia loop. Once you accept the premise that some of the voices in the room are synthetic, programmed to agitate, confuse, or sell, you lose the ability to trust that any of them are human. Every interaction becomes an interrogation. So in 1960, the fear was about allegiance. If you defended Les Goodman, you weren't just a neighbor, you were a sympathizer, a communist, someone who had betrayed the country. In 2026, the fear is about existence. If you defend an unpopular opinion, you're dismissed as a paid shill or a foreign asset or a hallucinating language model. It is the ultimate dehumanization. On Maple Street, it took all night for the neighbors to pick up rocks and attack each other. On our timeline, the transition from friend to target happens in milliseconds. We judge, sentence, and digitally execute our neighbors before we've even finished our morning coffee. The darkest moment in this episode is when they kill Pete Van Horn. They don't ask questions, they don't wait for proof, they shoot first, and they figure out who he was afterwards. In the digital age, we don't use guns. We release names, we call employers, we flood inboxes, we try to erase a person's life before we even understand who they are or whether they did anything at all. The order is the same: accusation, action, regret. We pull the trigger early because speed matters, because outrage travels faster than truth, because the algorithm doesn't reward restraint, it rewards whoever takes the fastest kill shot. This scene is one of the most important moments in television history. The aliens don't invade. They don't issue demands. They don't fire a single shot. They run a test. They flip the lights on, they flip them off, and they watch what happens next. They don't need weapons. Human nature will do the work for them. Fear fills the gaps. Suspicion picks the targets. Violence volunteers. It's the ultimate efficiency play. Why would you conquer a species when it's willing to turn on itself? All it takes is a switch and a crowd willing to pull the trigger for you. Now translate that to 2026. The aliens aren't watching from a hill. They're in a server room in Silicon Valley. They're not trying to conquer the planet. They're trying to hit quarterly engagement targets. They don't fire weapons, they make small adjustments to your feed, a slight boost in outrage, a heavier tilt towards political rage and fear, nothing dramatic or obvious. Serling hated having to censor himself for the comfort of sponsors.
The purpose, the point of a dramatic show, which is used as a vehicle of social criticism, is to involve an audience, to show them wherein their guilt lies, or at least indeed their association.
The modern algorithm doesn't censor, it sells panic. The aliens flickered the lights to provoke chaos. The algorithm flickers your feed, threats, riots, arguments, not to inform you, but to keep you alert, because fear sharpens attention, and an anxious mind is easier to monetize than a peaceful one. We are destroying Maple Street just to sell products. So if we were to write this episode today, what would the monster be? It wouldn't be a power outage, that's too clean. It's too mechanical. It would be the death of a shared reality. Serling used the ambiguity of the dark. We would use the ambiguity of identity. So imagine a Maple Street where neighbors aren't fighting because a car started, but because they all received a voicemail from each other that the other person never sent. The new horror isn't who is the alien. The new horror is my neighbor even real? The tragedy of the original episode is that they could have just walked over and talked to each other. But in 2026, the algorithm puts us in these filter bubbles. It ensures that we never walk over. We would write a story about a riot that happened entirely in a group chat while the physical street remains perfectly silent. A silent war fought by people sitting 3 feet apart. The thing that replaced the aliens is the algorithm that learned what scares us, what angers us, what makes us turn on one another, and then quietly gives us more of that. Not because it's evil, but because that's what we reward. The street lamps don't flicker anymore. The feed cycle does. Each refresh is likely to bring a new accusation. So before you share, before you decide who the enemy is, just pause. Because the last temptation on Maple Street was never fear. It was the belief that you were right before the truth was knowable.